Silence carries a weight that words often cannot. When you choose no contact, you are making a statement without speaking a single word. It is not about playing games or seeking revenge. It is about taking control of your own space and energy. Most people underestimate the power of silence because they are conditioned to believe that action, movement, and constant engagement are necessary to maintain relationships. But what if the real power lies in stepping back? What if your absence speaks louder than your presence ever could? No contact is not just a method, it is a shift in energy. When you remove yourself from someone's life, especially someone who is used to your presence, your attention, and your emotional investment, you disrupt their reality. People become accustomed to the roles others play in their lives. They expect you to reach out. They assume you will always be there. They may even take your presence for granted. But when that presence is suddenly removed, it forces a confrontation with the truth. Your energy was a privilege, not a right. Think about the last time you truly noticed something only after it was gone. It could be as simple as a song you didn't realize you loved until you stopped hearing it, or a place you didn't fully appreciate until you left. The same principle applies to people. When someone is constantly available, their presence is normalized. The mind doesn't need to question it. But the moment they withdraw, curiosity, uncertainty, and sometimes even panic set in. Silence creates a void, and human nature abhors a void. We are wired to seek closure, to fill in the gaps, to make sense of things that feel unfinished. That is why people struggle when someone suddenly stops responding. Their brain starts generating questions, looking for explanations, trying to connect the missing dots. Why did they stop talking? Did something happen? Are they mad? Are they moving on? These questions don't arise when a person is constantly engaging, constantly reaching out. But the moment silence enters the picture, the mind becomes restless. The beauty of no contact is that it forces the other person to sit with their own emotions. When someone has easy access to you, they never have to confront their feelings fully. If they miss you, they can send a quick text and receive instant reassurance. If they feel guilty, they can throw in an apology and expect immediate validation. But when you remove yourself, they have no outlet. They are left alone with their thoughts. They are forced to process what your absence means. This is why silence holds more power than words. If you were to reach out to explain yourself, to seek closure, you would be giving them the answers they crave. You would be relieving them of the very discomfort that is necessary for them to realize your worth. Silence does the opposite. It leaves them wondering. It leaves them searching. And in that search, they start to understand what you truly meant to them. However, the effectiveness of silence depends on your ability to commit to it fully. Many people attempt no contact but end up breaking it out of impatience or fear. They want to see results immediately. They want to know if the other person has noticed their absence. They want confirmation that their silence is working. But silence is not an instant strategy. It is a long-term commitment. The moment you break it, you reset everything. You give away the power you were building. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that if they go silent, the other person will immediately chase them. This is not always the case. Sometimes people take time to process their emotions. Sometimes their pride holds them back from reaching out. Sometimes they are simply waiting for you to break first. But regardless of their reaction, your silence should not be about them. It should be about reclaiming your own sense of self. Silence also reveals the true nature of relationships. If someone genuinely values you, your absence will make them reflect, and they will take action to reconnect. If they do not, then their silence is your answer. Either way, silence gives you clarity. It removes the illusion. It exposes what is real. The most challenging aspect of maintaining silence is overcoming your own emotional impulses, the desire to explain yourself, to seek reassurance, to clear up misunderstandings. These are all traps that can pull you back into the cycle of chasing validation. But the moment you learn to resist those impulses, you step into a new level of self-mastery. You begin to understand that your value does not depend on someone else's recognition of it. You start to realize that true strength lies in your ability to walk away from anything that no longer serves you. Most people think strength is about fighting, about proving a point, about making the other person see their worth. But real strength is in restraint. It is in knowing when to step back, when to stop giving explanations, when to let go. It is in understanding that sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to say nothing at all. The mind is a powerful tool, but it can also be a dangerous trap. When you go no contact, your thoughts don't just stop. In fact, they often become louder, more persistent, more deceptive. They start whispering doubts, planting what ifs, making you question your own decisions. Did I do the right thing? Will they even notice? What if they're relieved that I stopped reaching out? What if they move on and never think about me again? These thoughts can feel overwhelming because silence creates space. And that space is quickly filled by the mind's natural tendency to seek closure. But here's the truth. While your mind is playing tricks on you, theirs is doing the same to them. When you remove yourself from someone's life, it doesn't just leave a void in your own routine, it disrupts theirs as well. People are creatures of habit. They get used to certain interactions, rhythms, and expectations. They assume that if you've always been the one to check in, to reach out, to be available, you'll continue to do so. But when that pattern is broken, it forces them into a state of uncertainty. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. The human brain is wired to seek predictability. When something becomes uncertain, the mind starts searching for answers, trying to restore a sense of balance. This is why people struggle when they're suddenly ignored or cut off. It leaves too many unanswered questions. It creates a mental loop where they start replaying past interactions, trying to figure out where things shifted, what they missed, what they could have done differently. This is the power of no contact. It forces the other person to engage in their own internal battle without you having to lift a finger. At first, they may not feel it. They may assume you'll cave. They may think they always reach out first. They'll break eventually. But as time passes and your silence remains, doubt begins to creep in. Why aren't they reaching out? Have they moved on? Did they meet someone else? Were they never as attached as I thought? The very act of wondering about you increases your perceived value in their mind. You become something they need to figure out, something unresolved, something they may have underestimated. This psychological shift is what creates attraction, regret, or a need to reconnect. People don't crave what's always available to them. They crave what feels scarce. And nothing feels scarcer than someone who was once accessible and is now completely out of reach. It's in this uncertainty that emotions begin to intensify. What once felt stable and predictable now feels like a mystery. They start analyzing old conversations, looking for clues, wondering if you were planning this all along. The power of uncertainty isn't just in making them miss you, it's in making them feel the loss. The moment they realize they no longer have access to you is the moment they start questioning everything they took for granted. This is why breaking no contact too soon ruins the effect. The second you reach out, you confirm their assumptions. You remove the mystery. You tell their mind, see? They couldn't stay away. I still have control over this dynamic. And once they feel that sense of control, their curiosity fades. The spell is broken. But if you maintain your silence, if you let the uncertainty linger, their mind does the work for you. They start thinking about what they could have done differently. They start imagining worst case scenarios. Maybe you're happier without them. Maybe you found someone else. Maybe you've realized they weren't as special as you once thought. These thoughts eat away at them, not because you're doing anything manipulative, but because their own mind is trying to make sense of the situation. What makes this even more powerful is that people are naturally more drawn to things they can't fully understand. The unknown is intriguing. It makes them question their own reality. Was I wrong about them? Did I misread their level of attachment? This is where emotional discomfort comes into play. When someone is certain that they have control over a situation, they feel safe. But when they're unsure, that uncertainty creates emotional tension. And the natural response to emotional tension is to seek relief. That's when they start considering reaching out, checking your social media, asking about you through mutual friends, or even just reminiscing about you in ways they never did before. But here's the catch. They will only feel this level of uncertainty if you stay disciplined. The moment you break your own silence, you relieve their tension. Their mind shifts from, I wonder what's happening, to, oh, now I know. And once they know, they lose interest. Because they weren't just missing you, they were missing the idea of you. The version of you that became mysterious, unattainable, intriguing. This is where many people struggle. The need for certainty is just as strong in you as it is in them. You want to know if they're thinking about you, if they regret their choices, if they miss you the way you miss them. But the irony is that the only way to create that longing in them is by denying yourself the certainty you crave. It's a test of patience, of self-control, of trust in the process. Because the moment you break and reach out, all of that psychological tension dissolves. The questions stop, the mystery fades, and they return to the comfort of knowing they still have access to you. But if you hold your ground, if you allow their mind to work through the uncertainty without giving them answers, you force them to do something they never expected, they start to see you differently. They start to realize that maybe they never really knew you at all. Maybe they underestimated you. Maybe they made a mistake. And that single thought, what if I was wrong, is more powerful than anything you could ever say to them directly. Emotional attachment is a powerful force that keeps people bound to past experiences, relationships, and interactions. When you go no contact, you are not just removing yourself physically from someone's life. You are also creating an emotional distance that forces both you and them to confront the reality of what that connection truly meant. Most people underestimate the way attachment works. They assume it's based on love, logic, or shared experiences. But in truth, attachment is deeply tied to habit, routine, and emotional reinforcement. Think about the last time you developed a habit, whether it was something as simple as checking your phone the moment you wake up, or craving a certain food when you're stressed. These behaviors become ingrained in your daily life, not necessarily because they serve you, but because they provide a sense of familiarity and comfort. Human relationships work the same way. When someone is consistently present in your life, when you know they will always be there to answer your messages, to listen to your thoughts, to provide validation, your brain registers them as part of your normal routine. They become part of your emotional landscape, whether you realize it or not. This is why no contact can feel so difficult in the beginning. It's not just about missing the person. It's about breaking a deeply ingrained pattern. When you remove someone from your life, your brain reacts the same way it does when you try to quit an addictive substance. It panics. It craves the familiar. It searches for that sense of comfort. And in doing so, it convinces you that you need that person more than you actually do. This is why so many people break no contact. They mistake withdrawal symptoms for love. They assume that because they miss someone intensely, it must mean that they should reach out. that they should try to restore the connection. But here's what's really happening. Your mind is trying to pull you back into a state of emotional dependency. It wants things to go back to how they were, not because it was good for you, but because it was familiar. The same thing happens to the person on the receiving end of no contact. At first, they might feel relief, especially if they assumed you would always be there. But as time passes, the absence creates a void. That void grows bigger and bigger until it becomes impossible to ignore. They start wondering why they haven't heard from you. They start replaying past interactions, questioning their own decisions, and feeling the impact of your absence in ways they never expected. This is the paradox of emotional detachment. The more you pull away, the more the other person starts to feel the weight of what was lost. When something is always available, people take it for granted. They assume it will always be there, ready to respond, ready to engage. But when something becomes scarce, when access is suddenly denied, the mind starts to place a higher value on it. This is why people often don't realize how much someone meant to them until after they're gone. It's not necessarily because their feelings changed, but because they were forced to confront a reality they never prepared for. In many cases, when someone goes no contact, the person on the receiving end will go through stages of emotional withdrawal. At first, they might feel indifferent. They might assume you're just being dramatic or trying to prove a point. But as the silence stretches on, their mind starts filling in the blanks. They start wondering if you've moved on, if you've stopped caring, if they were wrong in assuming you'd always be available. This uncertainty creates discomfort, and discomfort forces introspection. This is why so many people who once seemed completely detached suddenly reappear when you least expect it. They might not even understand why they feel the need to reach out. They just know that something doesn't feel right. And that something is the absence of the emotional reinforcement they were once accustomed to. Your silence is working on them in ways they don't even realize. It's making them question their choices, their pride, their assumptions about how much control they had over the situation. But for no contact to truly be effective, you have to be willing to endure your own emotional withdrawal process. You have to sit with the discomfort of missing someone without trying to fix it. You have to remind yourself that missing someone is not the same as needing them. The human brain is wired to seek relief from pain. And emotional pain is no different. Your mind will try to convince you that reaching out will make things better, that hearing from them just once will ease your suffering. But in reality, every time you break no contact, you reinforce their belief that they still have emotional control over you. You make it easier for them to dismiss their feelings because they never truly had to sit with them long enough to understand them. When you resist the urge to break no contact, you force both yourself and the other person to confront the truth. If they genuinely care, they will feel the weight of your absence. If they don't, then their silence is your answer. Either way, you gain clarity. You free yourself from the cycle of emotional dependency and begin to regain control over your own thoughts and emotions. The most powerful aspect of emotional detachment is that it allows you to reclaim your own sense of self-worth. Instead of seeking validation from someone else, you start to realize that your value was never tied to their recognition of it. You start to see that real strength comes from within, from the ability to walk away from anything that no longer serves you. And once you reach that point, once you truly internalize the lesson, you become someone that no one can ever manipulate or take for granted again. Silence is one of the most powerful tools in human psychology. It speaks louder than words, triggers curiosity, and forces introspection in ways that direct communication never could. When you go no contact, your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back to the other person everything they need to confront within themselves. In a world where people are constantly connected, constantly seeking validation, and constantly distracted, the absence of communication creates an undeniable shift in energy. It disrupts expectations. It forces the other person to wonder, to question, and to feel the weight of their own choices. Most people underestimate the psychological effect of silence. They assume that if they're not actively reaching out, explaining themselves, or making their presence known, they'll simply be forgotten. But that's not how the human mind works. In reality, people remember silence more than they remember words. Words can be ignored, dismissed, or forgotten, but silence lingers. It leaves a question mark in the mind of the other person, a space that their thoughts must fill. And what do they fill it with? The uncertainty of not knowing what's happening on your end. The discomfort of wondering why you haven't reached out. The slow realization that they no longer have access to you in the way they once did. When someone expects you to break no contact, it's because they assume they still have a certain level of control over you. They believe you still care enough to check in, to seek closure, to make sure they're okay. They might even be testing you, waiting to see if you'll be the one to cave first. But when you remain silent, when you refuse to give them that validation, you shift the entire dynamic. You force them to sit with their own thoughts. And the longer they sit with those thoughts, the more those thoughts start working against them. At first, they might feel confident. They might assume you're just playing a game, that you'll eventually crack, that this is just another temporary pause in communication. But as time goes on, their confidence begins to waver. Their mind starts replaying past interactions, looking for signs, wondering if they miscalculated. Did I push them too far? Were they more serious about moving on than I thought? Are they really done with me? That uncertainty becomes a form of emotional tension, and tension demands resolution. The reason silence is so powerful is that it disrupts predictability. People are conditioned to expect a certain level of engagement from those they've been involved with. They expect a reaction, a response, an effort to reconnect. But when that expectation is met with nothing but silence, it forces them to adjust their perception of you. They start seeing you as someone who is not easily manipulated, someone who is strong enough to walk away, someone who does not need their validation. And that shift in perception makes you more valuable in their mind. Think about it this way. When something is readily available, people take it for granted. They assume they can access it whenever they want, so they don't place a high value on it. But the moment something becomes scarce, its perceived value increases. This is why limited edition items, exclusive memberships, and rare opportunities always generate more interest than things that are freely available. The same principle applies to human relationships. When you remove yourself from someone's life, when you become unavailable, you automatically increase your perceived worth. Not because you're playing a game, but because people only start appreciating what they had once they no longer have it. Silence also forces the other person to confront their own emotions. As long as you're in contact, they have an emotional buffer. They don't have to fully process what losing you means, because you're still there in some capacity. They might not be treating you right, but they don't feel the full impact of their actions because they know you haven't completely left. But when you remove that comfort, when your presence is no longer a factor in their life, they are left alone with nothing but their own thoughts. And those thoughts start to become overwhelming. They begin to realize that you're no longer seeking their validation, that you're no longer interested in explaining yourself, that you're no longer making an effort to stay connected. And that realization triggers a reaction. Some people will panic. They'll start reaching out, trying to reestablish the connection just to see if they still have influence over you. Others will retreat into their own minds, overthinking, analyzing, trying to figure out where things shifted. Either way, your silence is working in ways you can't even see. The irony of no contact is that while it may seem like you're doing nothing, you are actually exerting the greatest form of influence. You are allowing natural psychological forces to take effect. You are letting the absence of your energy do the work. And in doing so, you are regaining control, not just over the situation, but over yourself. Many people fear silence because it feels passive. It feels like giving up. But in reality, silence is a statement. It is a demonstration of strength. It is proof that you are not bound by emotional dependency, that you are not someone who needs to chase, beg, or plead for someone else's attention. And when that realization sets in, not just for you, but for the other person, it changes everything. The true power of silence is that it allows the other person to feel the weight of losing you. It forces them to sit in the emptiness left behind by your absence. And that space, that void, is far more impactful than any words you could ever say. When someone expects you to break no contact, it's because they assume they still have control over your emotions. They believe that at some point you will crack under the weight of your own feelings and reach out, giving them the satisfaction of knowing they still hold space in your mind. This belief isn't always rooted in arrogance. Sometimes, if in the past you were the one to initiate conversations, to seek resolution, or to hold the relationship together, then they have no reason to think that this time will be any different. They assume history will repeat itself. And for many people, it does, because breaking habits is hard, and emotions have a way of overriding logic. But what happens when you don't follow the expected pattern? What happens when you resist the urge to reach out? This is where real psychological shifts begin to occur. The moment they realize you are not going to be the one to break, the dynamic changes. At first, they might tell themselves that you're just being stubborn, that you're waiting for them to reach out first. But as more time passes, that confidence begins to fade. They start questioning their own assumptions. Were they wrong about you? Have you truly moved on? Are you stronger than they thought? This uncertainty begins to plant seeds of doubt in their mind. And doubt is one of the most powerful psychological forces when it comes to human relationships. As long as someone is certain of their position, they feel in control. But when doubt creeps in, it creates discomfort. And discomfort leads to internal conflict. They begin to wonder if they misjudged your feelings, if they underestimated your strength, if they were too quick to assume that you'd always be there waiting. This is where their emotional state begins to shift. At first, they might rationalize your silence. Maybe they're just busy. Maybe they're trying to make a point. Maybe they're playing a game. But eventually, those justifications no longer hold weight. The silence becomes undeniable. It stops being something they can dismiss and starts becoming something they have to confront. And this is when they begin to feel the weight of your absence in a way they never expected. People often mistake presence for power, assuming that the person who speaks the loudest or reaches out the most has the most influence. But true power lies in the ability to walk away and mean it. It's in the ability to remove yourself from someone's life without needing to announce it, without seeking validation, without waiting for permission. This kind of power is rare because most people are driven by their emotions. They want closure. They want reassurance. They want to be acknowledged. But when you detach, when you truly let go, you communicate something far more powerful than words ever could. You are not dependent on them for your sense of worth This realization hits hard. It forces them to see you in a different light. The person they once thought they had control over is no longer reacting, no longer chasing, no longer seeking their approval. And in that shift, you become the one who holds the power. Because now they are the ones questioning. They are the ones wondering. They are the ones feeling the void. This doesn't mean they will always act on it. Some people are too prideful to admit when they've lost control. They will try to suppress their emotions to convince themselves that they don't care. But deep down, the absence will be felt. And that feeling will stay with them, lingering in the back of their mind, surfacing in quiet moments when they least expect it. The key to maintaining this power is resisting the urge to break no contact. The moment you reach out, you reinforce their original assumption that you would eventually come back. You confirm their belief that they still hold a place of influence over you. And once that belief is restored, their sense of control returns. They no longer feel the discomfort of uncertainty because they now have their answer. You still care enough to reach out, but when you hold your ground, when you remain silent, you force them to experience the full impact of your absence. They have no reassurance, no closure, no validation. They are left with nothing but their own thoughts, their own regrets, their own unanswered questions. And this is where real introspection happens. Many people fear that by staying silent, they will be forgotten. But the opposite is true. People forget what is readily available, what is always within reach. They do not forget what they have to wonder about, what they have to question, what they have to mentally revisit over and over again. Silence creates mystery, and mystery keeps people engaged. It keeps them thinking about you even when they don't want to. This is why no contact is so powerful. It is not just about removing yourself physically from someone's life. It is about creating an emotional and psychological shift that forces them to confront the reality of losing you. And the longer you hold that silence, the stronger its impact becomes. When you go no contact, the most difficult battle isn't the one you fight with the other person. It's the one you fight within yourself. The internal war between your emotions and your logic, between your need for closure and your desire for self-respect, between your longing for connection and your commitment to self-worth. The truth is, no contact isn't just a strategy, it's a transformation. It's a process of shedding old habits, breaking emotional dependencies, and stepping into a version of yourself that refuses to be controlled by past wounds. But this transformation doesn't happen without resistance. The mind craves familiarity, the heart seeks comfort, and the ego wants reassurance. The moment you choose to walk away, your mind will begin playing tricks on you. It will convince you that you're being too harsh, that you're overreacting, that maybe you should just check in just once. And this is where many people falter, because they mistake discomfort for a sign that they're doing something wrong. They assume that if something is painful, it must be unnatural. But growth is painful. Breaking cycles is uncomfortable. And walking away from someone you once cared about will always come with moments of doubt. The difference between those who stay stuck in toxic patterns and those who elevate themselves is simple. The ability to sit with that discomfort without letting it dictate their actions. The person on the other side of this no contact situation may or may not be hoping you'll break. They may be waiting for you to return, counting on your emotional weakness to override your better judgment. Or they may be indifferent, assuming that they have you right where they want you, knowing that sooner or later you'll come back. But regardless of what they are thinking, the real question is, What are you thinking? Because no contact isn't about them, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your power, protecting your peace, and proving to yourself that you can choose yourself over your past. People often talk about self-respect as if it's an abstract concept, something that's nice to have but not necessary for survival. But self-respect is the foundation of everything. It's the standard you set for how the world treats you. And every time you break no contact, every time you reach out despite knowing it serves no purpose, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself. You reinforce the belief that your emotions have more control over you than your principles do. And that belief is what keeps people trapped in cycles of unfulfilling relationships, toxic connections, and endless emotional turmoil. This is why it is so important to develop the ability to self-soothe. Because if you don't learn to regulate your own emotions, you will always seek external validation. You will always look for someone else to make you feel better, to reassure you, to give you closure. And as long as you rely on others for that, you will never be free. The real power of no contact isn't in making the other person miss you. It's in proving to yourself that you don't need them to find peace. That you can sit with your emotions, process them, and still choose what's best for you. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. There will be nights when the silence feels unbearable, when the temptation to reach out is overwhelming, when your mind is flooded with memories and what-ifs. And in those moments, you must remember why you started this in the first place. You must remind yourself that every time you resist the urge to break no contact, you are strengthening a new version of yourself. A version that doesn't need external validation. A version that prioritizes inner peace over temporary relief. A version that knows that true closure isn't something another person gives you. It's something you give yourself. The truth is, if someone truly valued you, you wouldn't have to question it. You wouldn't have to wonder if they are secretly hoping you will break. You wouldn't have to analyze their silence, decode their actions, or search for hidden meanings in their absence. When someone genuinely cares, they show up. They communicate. They make an effort. The fact that you are even in a position where you feel the need to strategize around no contact is proof that something in this dynamic was not serving you. And that alone is reason enough to stay the course. People who are not ready to face their own emotions will always look for ways to manipulate yours. They will use silence as a weapon, waiting for you to be the one to break. They will act indifferent, pretending your absence doesn't affect them, hoping it triggers you into proving that you still care. But real strength is in seeing through these tactics and refusing to engage. Real strength is in recognizing that your energy is too valuable to be spent on someone who only notices your worth when you're gone. You have to remember that breaking no contact isn't just about sending a message or making a call, it's about what it represents. It represents a moment of weakness, a moment where emotions override self-respect, a moment where you trade long-term growth for short-term comfort. And the problem with these moments is that they accumulate. Each time you reach out, you reinforce the idea that they don't have to make an effort, that they don't have to change, that they can continue treating you the same way because they know you will always come back. But when you refuse to break, when you hold your silence, when you choose yourself over the temporary relief of hearing their voice, you shift everything. You no longer become someone they can take for granted. You no longer become predictable. You become an unknown, and in that unknown lies your power. Because nothing is more unsettling than realizing that the person you thought you had control over no longer needs you. That the person who once depended on you has learned to stand on their own. That the person who once craved your validation has found it within themselves. This is what no contact is really about. It's not about games. It's not about revenge. It's about growth. It's about breaking cycles. It's about becoming someone who no longer settles for less than they deserve. And the longer you hold to this, the clearer it becomes, not just to them, but to yourself. Because at the end of the day, the real goal isn't to make them regret losing you. The real goal is to make yourself so strong, so fulfilled, so at peace, that their presence or absence no longer defines your worth.